Metehan, an emperor, a commander, a legend. The stage of history has witnessed countless great commanders and rulers. Yet among them, there is one who not only founded an empire, but also left behind a legacy that would shape the ages. That person is the founder of the Great Hun Empire, the first great Khagan in Turkish history, Metehan. This video will take Metehan's legendary life story out of the dusty pages of history and bring it to you. With his strategies, wars, family, and the immense legacy he left behind, Metehan is one of the most influential leaders not only of the Turkish world, but of world history. If you're ready, let's embark on a journey to the Asian steppes thousands of years ago. Metehan was born in 234 BC. His father was Teoman, the leader of the Hun Turks. At that time, the Huns were a powerful and warlike community dominating the vast steppes of Central Asia. From a young age, Meet was raised not only as a prince, but also as a warrior. The harsh nature of the steppe shaped Mite into a leader candidate with an iron will from early childhood. According to the customs of the time, a Khagan candidate had to possess absolute discipline, physical endurance, and intelligence. Metehan stood out with all these qualities. From a young age, he learned horseback riding, archery, and swordsmanship. His training went far beyond that of an ordinary warrior, for his goal was not merely to survive, but to one day become the ruler of the steppes. Metehan's father, Teoman, was attempting to establish diplomatic relations with China and suppress his internal rivals. However, he began to consider not Mite as his heir, but the son he had from his Chinese wife. This was a turning point for Metehan. Teoman, to remove Mite from the scene, sent him as a hostage to the Yuezhi. But this was a move that would seal his fate. While held in Yuezhi lands, Metehan had the opportunity to observe his enemies and plan his escape. Before long, he succeeded in escaping with a clever plan and returned a changed man. He was no longer just a prince, but the great leader of the future. Upon his return, Mite saw that his father was still aligning with China and trying to marginalize him. This pushed him into action. He began to form a special unit under his command. This unit consisted of soldiers who obeyed his every order without hesitation, loyal to the core. One of the most famous parts of their training was hitting any target Meet pointed to with an arrow, without question. One day he pointed to his horse. The arrow was fired, and the horse was hit. Then he pointed to his own wife. Again, the soldiers fired. Finally, he pointed to his father, and none of the soldiers hesitated. Teoman was killed. Metehan seized both the throne and absolute power. He was now the Khagan of the Huns. This event was not merely a power shift, but one of the most strategic coups in Turkish history. When Metehan ascended the throne, the Hun territories were scattered, surrounded by enemies, and in a state of instability. His first task was to establish a disciplined army. He organized the army using the decimal system. This system, for the first time in history, created such a detailed and centralized structure. The army was made up of units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000 men, managed through a clear chain of command. This system would form the foundation of military organization for the Gökturks, Seljuks, and Ottomans. He then suppressed internal conflicts. After establishing authority over his own people, he turned to external enemies. Metehan first targeted the Yuezhi, who had once betrayed him. He quickly defeated them. Then he turned eastward to face the Donghu, who posed a threat. This war demonstrated his brilliance as a strategist. His tactic against the Donghu was to strike during the winter, when the enemy was strong but unprepared. The enemy was caught off guard and suffered a crushing defeat. With this victory, the Huns gained total dominance in the east. The most notable conflict, however, was with China. The construction of the Great Wall of China began during this period. China feared Metehan's army so greatly that they chose to protect themselves behind walls. In 200 BC, Metehan targeted the Han Empire of China. Emperor Gaozu of Han marched against Mite with a massive army, but Mite ambushed the army skillfully. Near Biting Fortress, the Chinese emperor was surrounded. In this battle, Metehan cut off the enemy's water supply and captured their provisions. The Chinese emperor was forced to ask for peace in desperation. This victory was not just a military triumph. but a historical turning point that instilled fear of the Turks in China for centuries. Metehan was not only a warrior, but also a master diplomat. In his peace treaties with China, he included clauses for marriage with Chinese princesses. Through these marriages, he gained influence over Chinese internal politics. He also secured access to China's silk, grain, and technological knowledge. Thus, he controlled China through both warfare and marriage. Metehan not only fought with China, but also confronted many different tribes and peoples in Central Asia. The Tungusic peoples, Tibetans, Sogdians, Mongol tribes, all of these groups either submitted to Metehan or were completely destroyed. Thus, the Huns established absolute power across Central Asia. By 188 BC, Metehan had brought 26 different nations under his rule. This was one of the world's first great multi-ethnic empires in history. Metehan was not only a warrior, but also a statesman. He established legal rules in the Hun state. To ensure justice in society, he strengthened the traditional laws, or ture. Each tribe had a chief, and above them were leaders directly accountable to the Khagan. This centralized system became the foundation of Turkish state tradition in the centuries to follow. Metehan remained on the throne for 35 years. Through war, diplomacy, and his governance system, he became almost like a god of the steppes. But like all mortals, his time came to an end. In 174 BC, at the age of 60, he passed away. He was succeeded by his son, Ki-ok. However, the system and legacy Metehan left behind laid the foundations for an empire that would endure for centuries. Metehan is a figure who influenced not only Turkish history, but world history. From military organization to state administration, from war strategies to diplomatic maneuvers, his systems were emulated even thousands of years later. The tradition he began extended through the Gök Turks, Uyghurs, Seljuks, Ottomans, and the modern Republic of Turkey. Even in Chinese sources, he is recognized as a great genius. And the pressure the Huns applied during his reign accelerated the construction of the Great Wall. Conclusion: more than a Khagan. Metehan was not an ordinary ruler, he was the initiator of an era. He was the first great emperor of the Turks on the stage of history. His name echoed across battlefields, his strategies struck fear into his enemies. Today, the Turkish nation's understanding of independence, its military tradition, and state organization are rooted in the foundations he laid. The Great March that began with him became the herald of a Turkish civilization that spread from the steppes to the world for thousands of years. Metehan, an emperor, a commander, a legend.